Who would have thought that this shy, nerdy young man would one day become the guitarist of a legendary band and create genius music? Brian May is a rock star who stood far apart from the usual sex, drugs, and rock and roll creed. In fact, Brian May is a professor of astrophysics who has published scientific journals and written books on astronomy. He has even collaborated with NASA. Among all his extraordinary accomplishments, one fact never fails to astonish people. All that brilliant music came from a handmade guitar, built from scrap materials. Brian Harold May was born on July 19, 1947, in Hampton, Middlesex, England. He grew up in an academic environment. His father, Harold May, was an electronics engineer who worked for the British Air Ministry. From an early age, Brian displayed two notable traits: extraordinary curiosity and a profound passion for music. He didn't just enjoy listening to songs, he dissected them, asking himself endless questions. How does that sound come about? And why does this note feel more moving than the others? He began learning the guitar at a young age with a cheap, simple acoustic guitar. Soon, however, like many kids eager to explore, he longed for an electric guitar. The problem was that his family simply couldn't afford one. Rather than giving up, Brian and his father decided to build a guitar themselves using whatever old materials they could find around the house. They crafted this guitar from scraps that were nearly thrown away, including a piece of wood from a fireplace mantel, parts of a discarded bicycle, metal plates from a food tin, and even his mother's knitting needles. They collected everything and carefully reassembled it. With patience, Brian's father, Harold May, was meticulous and brilliant. He taught Brian how to solder wires, measure string tension, and fine-tune the sound. There were no professional factory guidelines, only the logic of engineering and the intuition of music. The guitar was unique not only because of its materials, but also because of the sound it produced. Brian wanted a guitar that could sing, not just roar. He wanted long sustained tones that could be entirely shaped by the touch of his fingers. To achieve this, he designed his own tremolo system made from bicycle springs and steel plates, which allowed him to bend notes without losing stability. The result was a guitar with a distinctive voice that no commercial brand could replicate. Brian often described the building process in interviews as a kind of spiritual bond between father and son. Every piece of wood, every wire, and every first note played was the product of their shared love and hard work. That guitar would later be named the Red Special and go on to become one of the most iconic guitars of all time. Before the world knew the majestic sound of Queen, it all began with a small, rather ordinary project. Brian May was not the kind of young man who would recklessly pursue a career on stage without a plan. In fact, he studied at Imperial College London, one of the world's top engineering schools, majoring in physics and mathematics to secure his future in academia. However, no matter how carefully he planned, destiny still led him back to music. In 1968, he formed a band called Smile with drummer Roger Taylor. The band didn't last long, but it planted the first seed of something far greater. When their vocalist left, an eccentric art student named Farrokh Bulsara, who would later be known as Freddie Mercury, stepped in. He brought with him a bold new vision to make the band a global phenomenon. Freddie was not just a singer, he was a wild, theatrical, uncompromising creative force. Brian, with his calmer, more scientific approach, was the perfect counterbalance. They didn't always see eye to eye, but magic was born out of that tension. Queen finally took shape in 1970 with the addition of John Deacon on bass. These four very different personalities came together. Freddie was flamboyant, Brian was intellectual, Roger was energetic, and John Deacon was quiet yet technically brilliant. From the beginning, Brian played a vital role in the band. He wasn't just a supporting guitarist, he was also the composer behind many of Queen's most iconic songs. When Freddie arrived with a brilliant idea, Brian knew how to execute it musically and technically. When the band needed something different, Brian delivered with three-part harmonies or a guitar solo that could weep like a human voice. Throughout it all, the Red Special remained his ultimate weapon. That guitar became the signature sound of Queen while Brian quietly but steadily built his legacy as one of the most original guitarists the world has ever known. And a lineup of 1970s rock guitarists competing to showcase their lightning-fast fingers and wild stage antics, Brian May stood out with his completely different approach. He wasn't one to smash amplifiers with his guitar or shred at virtuoso speed. Instead, he stood calm and focused, letting every note he played speak for itself. His music didn't need to scream. Just one stroke of the strings and you knew it was him. His playing style was unique and deeply structured. Brian treated the guitar as if it were a living instrument. His signature technique was multi-tracking harmonies, playing the same melody 3 times at different pitches and layering them to create majestic harmonies like an orchestral chorus. He was also known for an unusual habit. Rather than using a standard plastic pick, like most guitarists, he played with a British 6-pence coin. According to May, the coin provided sharper control over the notes and added a stronger texture to the sound. As unlikely as it may seem, this quirk became an inseparable part of May's unmistakable tone, one that no one else could ever truly replicate. With Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen revealed a level far beyond that of their rock contemporaries. The song is like an opera set to rock music. Its structure is bizarre. There is no repeating chorus, and it feels like 5 different songs stitched into one. Yet, this is Queen's masterpiece, and Brian May was at the technical heart of all that beautiful chaos. He knew how to transform complex harmonies into something pleasing to the ear. He knew when the guitar should take center stage, and when it should retreat behind the thunder of the piano or the piercing cry of the vocals. One of the most brilliant examples of his contribution is the Prophet's Song. From the album A Night at the Opera, the 8-minute song features spiraling layers of a cappella vocals. Brian played with delay effects, creating not just echoes but a kind of cathedral of sound, making the song feel like a ritual from another world. This was the moment when Brian May made the guitar sound like something other than a guitar, creating an atmosphere that transcended its time. In a track like We Will Rock You, Brian proved that simplicity can be stunning. The song is built almost entirely on claps and stomps, yet his guitar solo, appearing only at the very end, elevates the entire song in just a few seconds. It's brief but powerful enough to be remembered as one of the most iconic guitar solos of all time. Brian's genius extended beyond music composition. As a lyricist, he offered a unique yet masterful perspective. Consider 39, a song he wrote that was inspired by Einstein's theory of relativity. The lyrics are steeped in science and tell the story of space travel and time dilation. Among all the lyrics he wrote, however, The Show Must Go On may be the most sentimental. Brian wrote it during Freddie's final, painful days. He knew Freddie was facing death, yet he insisted on performing as if nothing were wrong. The song became Brian's letter of love, courage, and hope to his friend, and Freddie sang it with unimaginable power, even when he could barely stand. Even amid world tours, exhausting album recordings, and life as the guitarist of one of the greatest bands of all time, Brian May held on to an unfaltering love, his obsession with the sky, the origin of light from distant stars, and the behavior of time at the edge of the galaxy. Brian's love of astronomy was never just a hobby. Before Queen exploded onto the scene, he began working on his doctoral thesis on the reflection of light from interplanetary dust. However, when his music career began to consume his life, he was forced to put his studies on hold right when he was about to finish. However, what's extraordinary is that Brian never gave up on his dream of becoming an astronomer. Decades later, after Freddie's death and during Queen's hiatus, Brian returned to campus, reopened his old notes, and finished what he had started. In 2007, at the age of 60, he officially earned his Ph.D. in Astrophysics from Imperial College London. And he didn't stop there. he became involved in major scientific projects, collaborating with some of the world's leading scientists, even NASA. One of his most iconic moments came when he joined the team analyzing data from the New Horizons spacecraft as it passed by Pluto and trans-Neptunian objects. The most beautiful aspect of it all is how Brian never separated music and science. To him, they are both expressions of the same curiosity and creativity, just in different forms. He created harmonies in music and calculated the orbits of cosmic dust particles. Brian even co-authored several popular astronomy books, including Bang, The Complete History of the Universe, which he wrote with astrophysicists Sir Patrick Moore and Chris Lintott. The book became a bestseller, helping countless readers explore the universe in a fun, accessible way. While many musicians his age have retired or become lost in nostalgia for their past, Brian May keeps moving forward. He never stops playing, creating, or speaking out. His age may advance, but his spirit remains young, and his guitar still burns with the same fire it had the day he built it. After Freddie Mercury passed away in 1991, many believed that Queen would come to a complete stop. However, Brian, together with Roger Taylor and John Deacon, who later chose to retire, decided to keep the flame of Queen alive. Brian never wanted to rush into continuing Queen. He knew Freddie was irreplaceable, so he took his time. During that time, he pursued solo projects, including the release of Back to the Light, an album revealing a deeply personal and spiritual side. Later, when the unique and charismatic singer Adam Lambert emerged as a new star, Brian and Roger decided to form Queen plus Adam Lambert. This was not intended as a replacement for Freddie, but rather as a way to keep Queen's music alive and evolving. Throughout his career, whether in music or science, Brian has always remained true to his values. He never allowed fame to steer him off course. To this day, he remains what he has always been, a man deeply in love with music and science.